Hello and welcome to my Chapter 3 lecture on developmental theories. Let's hop on in. Okay, so overview, we're going to go over some developmental theories and look at how those theories can be, you're rather going to be guided to reflect on how those different theories can be applied to the cast of clients that was introduced to you in Chapter 1. So developmental theories focus upon the role of early childhood experiences and or lifespan development on a person's career choices and level of satisfaction within various careers. So basically, did you know they grow up in a home with a mom that worked 3-4 jobs? Did they grow up in a home where their family was reliant upon welfare and food stamps in order to be able to get through things? Did they go through trauma or not? Did they grow up in gang life or not? Did they grow up in a wealthy family where they had a nanny or a butler that took care of them and they didn't really have a connection with their parents, right? What kind of experiences have they had? What kind of exposure have they had to career opportunities that may contribute to their career choices later? So Anna Rowe believe that occupational choices are largely determined by early childhood experiences as well as the nature of the parenting received. So that would have to do with the authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, and uninvolved type of parenting styles, right? So what kind of parenting did a child receive? And that can impact what they do for work later, right? If they feel secure in themselves versus insecure in themselves, things of that nature. And she developed a visual model illustrating how these factors tend to result in the choice of various occupational groups. Figure 3.1 in your text shows that model, and it's designed to illustrate how the nature of parenting one experienced as a child reflects occupational choice. And so there's different layers: warm versus cold, the parenting style, and the sub-parenting type, the subtype of parenting style, looking at major orientation as well as occupational groupings. So according to Rowe, 3 different types. There's the emotional parenting style, emotional concentration on the child, and the subtypes can be overprotective or over-demanding concentration. Another parenting style is the avoidance of the child, which can lead to emotionally rejecting avoidance or neglectful avoidance. And then acceptance of the child leads to casual acceptance and loving acceptance, right? And these different types of parenting styles can absolutely impact the confidence a child has in his or herself, themselves, to be able to be successful, to achieve things, to do any kinds of jobs. And in terms of her occupational group classification system, it was originally published in 1957, and it actually preceded the Holland hexagon, the RIASEC classification that you learned about in the last lecture. But in this occupational grouping, there are 8 different groups: people, business, contact, organization, technology, natural phenomena, science, general, cultural, and arts and entertainment. And then there's different levels of the occupation 1 through 6, from unskilled to professional and managerial, right? And strengths and weaknesses of this model: the weaknesses: Rowe had no experience in career counseling, and her theory has not been supported by empirical research, which, if y'all haven't learned that yet in undergrad or in other classes during your master's degree, empirical support is what gives any research its punch, or any approach its punch, rather, because it's demonstrating efficacy in a randomized control trial or some other form of treatment that's effective, or some other form of research that's effective, significant. Strengths of that model: it's work inspired. Other career development theories to also consider the role of childhood and own psychological needs on occupational choices. So that's a positive thing, because I don't know about you, but I absolutely think that your childhood experiences impact what you want to do in the world of work. I know for me, my childhood, my background definitely motivated me. I wanted to help heal hurting families, or help people with pain overcome that pain. So I can say that it's true for me, at least. Maybe it's true for you. Okay, so Edward Borden came up with the psychodynamic model of career choice and satisfaction, and was interested in how occupational choice allows individuals to seek expression of their unconscious personality structure and conscious self-concept. And that theory, again, is psychodynamic, right? So the id, ego, and superego, if you're familiar with Freud already, you know about these different things. The id is kind of like the unregulated part of the self, very primitive. The ego is what reflects the external pressures and the reality-based need to work, and the superego is shown in the internalization of reality-based expectations and external pressures that result in a compulsion to work even when work takes effort and or is unpleasant, right? So that's that psychodynamic. So he would be someone that would have been a close follower of Freud. So implications. So if a person has major problems like a personality disorder, they're likely to have vocational difficulties as well. And so traditional career counseling wouldn't be enough, and psychodynamic treatment would be necessitated. And then if a person does not have major problems in their personality structure and instead is presenting primarily with career concerns, psychodynamic treatment would not be necessary. So another theory is Ginsberg. Eli Ginsberg is an economist. He challenged existing theories, criticized psychodynamic and personality theories as being inadequate and unsupported by research. He also criticized environmentalist exclusive focus on the labor market as insufficient. Ginsberg developed a truly interdisciplinary theory that drew upon psychiatry, sociology, and psychology. And the two versions were published in 1951 and 72. So his theory is developmental in nature, meaning it's looking at development over time. So it focused on occupational decision-making processes that occur between the ages of 11 and 21. And he looks at the 3 periods before 11 involving fantasy choices, involving maybe Santa Claus and I want to be an astronaut on the moon and things like that. Ages 11 to 17 are tentative. So maybe I'm looking at my interests, what's my capacity, what I value, I'm kind of transitioning in life, what am I interested in? And then 17 to 21, you're going to be looking at realistic choices for you based on your interests, your hobbies, educational opportunities, things like that. You're going to explore, crystallize, which means concretize or make more secure what you're wanting to do. And it's going to become more specific. 3 elements of his original theory involved occupation choices as a process, not an event. So it happens over time. The belief that the process of occupational choice is largely irreversible. It just happens, it happens. And then there's an assertion that compromise is an essential element of every choice. So weighing your pros and cons and figuring out what you can and what you can't do, a little give and take in that sense. So only the first element withstood the test of time and research, and the second and third elements were addressed in the revision of his theory. He also incorporated revisions to those 3 elements involving elimination of age ranges, eliminating the concept of irreversibility, that they can be reversed, and also he moved addressing the static concept of compromise of a single occupational choice to the concept of optimization over time with a dynamic process. So, summary of that: early developmental theories of historical importance, but they're no longer widely used. There's a little summary of what each of them did. And next up, we're going to look at developmental theories used by Super and Gottfredson. Okay, so Donald Super, instead of using a trait factor approach and looking for a match between a person and a particular career, he used an evolving process in which individuals express themselves through their careers. The theory consists of 14 theoretical propositions, 3 segments, each with a visual model. And there are 3 segments and sorry, I'm about to sneeze, so it's distracting me. Okay, it went away. 14 theoretical propositions, 3 segments, each with a visual model, and a career assessment and counseling model. So what are these 14 propositions? They're listed in table 3.4 in your book. And look at these here. So number 1, people differ in their abilities, personalities, needs, values, interests, traits, and self-concepts. Yeah, absolutely. People can have some of those things in common, but it's not always the same concoction, right? So they might have similar personalities, similar values, but their needs might be different or interests might be different. Number two, people are qualified by virtue of these characteristics for a number of occupations. So that's to say that personalities, needs, abilities, values, interests, traits, self-concepts, all these things, they make people able to have a number of different jobs. And absolutely, that's true. It's a matter of finding what works for each individual. Proposition 3, each occupation requires a characteristic pattern of abilities and personality traits with tolerances wide enough to allow some variety of occupations for each individual, as well as some variety of the individuals in each occupation. Sure, that can be true. 4, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but preferences and competencies with time and experience can be products of social learning and can start in late adolescence. And over time, basically, you gain continuity in your choice and you adjust to choices over time as you learn, as you grow. Number 5, this is also a very long one that I won't read the whole thing, but this is talking about maxi cycles and mini cycles and recycling through your growth and exploring and reestablishing, and you learn and you grow and you learn and you grow. You might be destabilized at some point, but you get back on the horse, if you will, through the cycle of growth. And it's got the sequence of growth, exploration, establishment, maintenance, and disengagement that can be marked by developmental tasks. Proposition 6, this is talking about the nature of the career path and how it's determined by different aspects of the way you're being raised or the environment that you're living in. You know, what's your socioeconomic status? What are your mental abilities? What are your skills? What kind of education do you have or do you have access to? What are your values? How mature are you? What kind of self-exploration have you done in order to discover what you're good at and what you're going to do, right? And these are absolutely things that would be helpful to go through with clients when you're doing career counseling. Who are you and what do you know about yourself and what are you interested in? It's really definitely something that you can use to help clients in career counseling. Number 7, success in coping with the demands of the environment and of the organism in the context. And that context at any given life career stage depends on the readiness of the individual to cope with these demands on, that is on his or her career maturity. So basically, how ready is the client to face their need to kind of mature and grow up and make these different decisions? How ready they are to face these different choices is going to affect their ability to be successful in career counseling. Number 8, career maturity is a psychosocial construct that can be operationally defined by comparing an individual's resources, both cognitive and affective, for coping with a current task to the resources needed to master that task, right? So how mature someone is can be defined through how well they can cope with tasks related to career counseling, related to career, right? How well can they do that? Operationally defined. So stages, steps, you're comparing the resources with the current task. What are they capable of handling based on what they've got, right? 9, development through the life stages can be guided partly by facilitating the maturing of abilities, interests, and coping resources, and partly by aiding in reality testing and in the development of self-concepts. So when it says reality testing, that's making sure that a client has insight and awareness regarding what reality looks like and what are realistic expectations, what are realistic thoughts to be having about self, about others, about potential outcomes for a given situation or realistic expectations for something. And reality testing can look like challenging cognitive distortions, which is something that if you become a cognitive behavioral therapist or you cognitive therapist, you might find yourself using a lot of that reality testing through cognitive restructuring, which is changing an unhealthy thought into a healthier or a more helpful or more realistic thought. But yes, you want to help clients see reality as it is in order to effectively help them find a career that suits them. Because if they think, I don't know, that they're going to be an astronaut, but they have scoliosis and some other different, like a heart condition that doesn't allow them to go at high speeds, not really a realistic goal to become an astronaut because their health prevents them from being able to do that perhaps, right? So Veracity, it's one of our ethics. One of the things that we're called to do is veracity, work with clients truthfully. And that means reality testing sometimes. Okay, Proposition 10. This is talking about synthesizing, compromising process in which your self-concept is examined, and you look at the roles that a client plays in their life in order to figure out how they want to develop their career or how they are developing their career in the direction that it's going. So you're looking at helping them to develop a self-concept in terms of what they want to do for work, how they see themselves working, all those kinds of things. Proposition 11, the process of synthesis and compromise between individual and social factors, between self-concepts and reality, is one of role-playing and learning from feedback, whether the role is played in fantasy, in the counseling interview, or in such real-life activities as classes, clubs, part-time work, and entry jobs. So basically, this is talking about getting to know what your self-concept is and what reality is through role-playing. Like, you can prepare to do an interview by practicing with your counselor, and your counselor is the interviewer, and they're asking a bunch of questions and you practice your answers as a client. Or it could look like going to classes, clubs, doing different jobs to discover what works for that client. And it's very much like a trial error type of thing, in that sense of, I'm going to go try some jobs I think might work for me. And then maybe you discover that it doesn't work for you. And so you're going to leave that job and find something else. Number 12, work satisfactions and life satisfactions depend on the extent to which an individual finds adequate outlets for abilities, needs, values, interests, personality traits, and self-concepts. So satisfaction is going to be rooted in how much those things are fulfilled in that role, or by that role, perhaps. And then number 13, the degree of satisfaction people obtain from work is proportional to the degree to which they have been able to implement self-concepts. So how well have they been able to make the aspects of themselves be part of the work that they're doing? And the more that they're able to do that, the more satisfied they're going to be in the work that they do. And then number 14, work and occupation provide a focus for personality organization for most men and women, although for some individuals, this focus is peripheral, incidental, or even non-existent. Then other foci, such as leisure activities and homemaking, may be central. Social traditions such as sex role stereotyping and modeling, racial and ethnic biases, and the opportunity structure, as well as individual differences, are important determinants of preferences for such roles as worker, student, leisurite, homemaker, and citizen. So social traditions and these other different things can lend to preferences for certain roles. So maybe women are brought up in a home where the mom is a stay-at-home mom, and maybe they've never been exposed to a stay-at-home dad before. And so they might, or maybe a son is only ever exposed to his father working. And so he might not ever get exposed to the concept of a stay-at-home dad. So the different things that we're exposed to can absolutely impact the work that we're open to, or that we would maybe respect or be willing to try. And that's something you want to think about when working with clients that are seeking career counseling. What are their morals, values, beliefs about work, right? Okay, so super segments, there's 3 different segments involving the different propositions and different visual models. So the ladder, the life, career, rainbow, and the archway of career determinants. So I'm not going to go super deep on these slides, because I know that you guys have access to the slides and you can read these things for yourself. But looking at segment 1, the lifespan, that's something absolutely you want to look at. Where is a client in their lifespan? Are they young? Are they older? Where are they in the chapter of their life? Because that's absolutely going to affect maybe their willingness to try new things, or do any kind of job outside of what they've always done, or switching careers, or getting a new certification, these different kinds of things. But they've got different career tasks and different career transitions that they're going to go through. And they're going to experience that growth, re-exploration, and reestablishment. And then in terms of the life stages, there are 5 of them. There's growth, exploration, establishment, maintenance, and decline, disengagement. And you got super's ladder and the maxi cycles, mini cycles. And this is an image that I've always liked of super's rainbow. And it just shows when the different phases might start at different levels of age and different stages of the rainbow. Right, so you see homemaker might start somewhere around 20s, spouse might start somewhere around 30, parent might start somewhere around 30, worker might start somewhere around 25, citizen, you start having that identity perhaps around 20, leisurite, maybe younger, student, even younger identity, and then the child, right, very young. So you look at the life roles here, and then you see the different stages and how long they can last. So I just thought this was a cool little image I want to share with you guys. And if I haven't said it in another lecture already, you can always go to Google and look up these different concepts and just see what images pop up for you. But in the growth stage, you've got a number of developmental tasks involving future orientation, developing personal responsibility for your own life, achieving, developing an orientation towards achievement with respect to school and work. So you start to care about your grades, start to care about making your own money, becoming independent. You're developing employability skills and attitudes. And substages can involve curiosity, fantasies, interests, and capacities. And the fantasy stage is going to be like believing in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and these kinds of things. And then self-concept is also something that is related to the stage. In the exploration stage, ages 14 to 24, you are engaging in crystallizing, specifying, implementing career interests, and substages involve tentative transition and trial and recycling. So trial and error type thing, trial, if it doesn't work out, then recycle and go back and do something else. But career maturity is developed during this time. And for the establishment stage, that's going to be age 25 to 44. You're developmentally going to be stabilizing, consolidating, and advancing, and it's going to involve perhaps a committed trial, stabilization, consolidation, maybe some frustration, advancement perhaps, and you're going to be going through career adaptability, recycling, especially for those persons that maybe they tried something for an extended period and now they're kind of over and they want to do something new. I know when I went in my master's program, there was only 5 or 6 of us that were fresh out of our bachelor's degree. And a lot of my classmates were in their 40s and 50s, and it was like their second or third career of something that they were doing. They were a teacher or a police officer first, or they were a pastor or some other something, but counseling wasn't the first thing. So that's part of what that recycling or that adaptability can look like, changing times, changing interests, changing spiritual beliefs, changing anything can lead to a career change. And then the maintenance stage is 45 to 65. And this is where you're holding on, keeping up, innovating, potentially what you're doing for your career, trying to make it more exciting, not monotonous, not the same thing over and over again. Substages can involve holding, stagnating, or updating, decelerating, or innovating, as well as recycling. And then the decline disengagement stage is 66 to 75, where you decelerate and start thinking about retirement, where you're going to live, what you're going to do. Are you going to work part-time? Or are you just going to go on vacations and spend all your 401k? Like, what are you going to do? And you can potentially look at specialization, disengagement, retirement. And just something that I've had a professor say to me, if you're ever working with a client and you don't know where to start, look at where they are developmentally. How old are they? And what's going on in their life developmentally based on the age that they are. So if they're 15, they're trying to fit into social circles and who am I? And I have no idea and all these different things, versus a 40-year-old, they're kind of settling into being a parent and they want to generate some income and they want to have meaning and they want to provide for their family and these different things. But if they're 80, they're starting to reflect back on their life and what they've done and if it meant anything, right? So you think about these different things. If you don't know where to start, go to developmental stage. Where are they? And then super's ladder of life stages. There's ages, points of transition, substages, and stages. Figure 3.2 in your book is something that you can look at. There's also this image that I found where it shows the different stages here with transition. And it shows the different aspects of each age stage. So you got the 5 main stages out here, and then all those sub things here. And then you see the ladder building over time. So that's just an image that you can use if you like it. And then maxi cycles, mini cycles, Super's 5 stages represent a maxi cycle. However, he recognized that career development doesn't always go smoothly. Careers can be destabilized by many factors. Inability to continue working at a job due to illness or injury, or maybe you can't work at a job because of layoffs or changes in human resource needs, right? And you're seeing the names of those characters from the previous lectures popping up here. Other socioeconomic or personal events, such as getting fired or becoming a widow or realizing you're gay or wanting to start a family. These are different things that can destabilize your job because maybe you've got a racist boss. Maybe you've got somebody that's not understanding of personal tragedy and they don't really care, and you can't miss work, you can't take off, whatever that looks like. And when this happens, people may recycle through the stages. In a mini cycle, they're going all the way back through, figuring out what they like and what are they going to do and how are they going to make a difference and in their life and all of that kind of stuff, right? So life space, also looking at segment 1, associated with proposition 14, work can provide a focus that is peripheral, incidental, or even non-existent. And then leisure activities, homemaking, other things can be more central. And so you really just want to look at what roles and what dynamics are important for your client in front of you, and how do those things impact what they are or are not willing to do for work, or what they do or don't want to be doing for work. In life space, you can see table 3.6 in your book for theaters and roles. So theaters, the places that we live, the places that we have roles that we fulfill, the home, the community, school, work, could be even church, which could be part of community. And then there are 9 roles: child, student, leisureite, citizen, worker, spouse, homemaker, parent, and pensioner. And then the Super's life, career, rainbow, which we saw a little while ago. And there are personal determinants that affect the way that one goes through the rainbow, different roles, as we saw: ages, life stages, social determinants, situational determinants, which can be historical and socioeconomic. As an application activity, if you wanted to, you can make your own rainbow and show the ages and emphasis on different roles over the course of your own life thus far. So you can look at, how have I been part of my own rainbow? What has my rainbow looked like? And draw a line to indicate the present day and address your own roles to date. And you can even address predicted roles for your future. So sometimes applying a concept to our own self is a way to help ourselves like concretize material. So I think that could be a great way to help yourself remember the rainbow by doing your own, if you'd like to. Okay, so segment 3, self-concept. A major premise of Super's theory that distinguishes it from other developmental theories involves a central role of self-concept in career choice. Super believed that the choice of a career should be viewed as a way in which a person attempts to implement or express his or her self-concept. The importance of self-concept is reflected in numerous propositions and is in central role. That's not typed right. I didn't make this PowerPoint. I edited parts of this PowerPoint, and is a central role in the archway of career determinants. Excuse me. Okay, so also he acknowledged many dimensions of self-concept in the system, other role-specific self-concepts in the occupational self-concept. He addressed the difference between public and private self-concept, looking at vocational identity as well as that occupational self-concept. And then the archway of career determinants, you can see figure 3.4 in your book. And the left column has the biographical and individual characteristics, whereas the right has geographical and contextual factors. And the arch at the top is for holding one sense of self, role-specific self-concepts, and developmental stage. And then some important vocabulary to remember from Super is career identity. That refers to career self-concepts. Career maturity refers to an individual's capacity to meet demands of age-appropriate tasks. Readiness refers to one's capacity to learn career-related concepts and skills and to move to next stage of development. And career adaptability refers to adults' abilities to engage in career decision-making. And so these would be things that you'd want to look at if you work with anyone on career counseling. Do they have a developmental disorder that maybe makes them have a lower level of maturity or readiness or adaptability because of an intellectual developmental disorder or autism spectrum disorder diagnosis? things like that. They had a traumatic brain injury that has set them back. You want to look at these different things, and something that you'll likely learn at some point in your counseling program is about the Prochaska and DiClemente stages of change. How ready is your client to make changes in their life and develop a career identity or start having a career generally? So those are things that you'll learn about and that you can implement there. And then some assessments that you can use in order to look at role salience, career maturity, career adaptability, values, and decision-making are these different instruments on the right here. Career development assessment and counseling model, Super's model for how to integrate the 3 segments of this theory into the actual counseling process is what that was used for. He begins with the assessment of a client's readiness to engage, and then does an assessment of how important the worker role is to that client. If they're not ready, career development activities are recommended, but if they are ready, you want to look at interests, ability, and value assessments to push them along because they're already motivated, right? And Super recommends using these assessment results with a matching process, much like the process used by trait factor counselors. And now looking at the theory of circumscription, compromise, and self-creation, Linda Gottfredson addresses early influences on career choice that limit the careers a person will seek. Circumscription is the process of eliminating unacceptable career options based primarily on gender and social class. Compromise is the elimination of career choices due to limiting factors and focuses on the impact of gender and prestige levels of jobs, right? So they're looking at what works for them and what doesn't, what fits my gender, what fits my social class, what fits my values, right? Gottfredson refers to the process of eliminating options as circumscription, and it's a process by which youngsters progressively eliminate unacceptable vocational alternatives in order to carve out a zone of acceptable occupational alternatives from the full menu that a culture offers. She looks at circumscription as largely irreversible, which is different from what the previous guy said, is that he reversed it later. And then for stages of circumscription, there are these 2 stages here, stage 1 and 2, size and power versus sex roles. And you see how these can look different for children versus adults, okay? And then for sex roles, you see how this looks different for the male and female role in looking at sex type boundaries. Stage 3, social evaluation. Stage 4, internal unique self stage. So again, if you don't know where to go and with a client, and you perhaps like the stages of circumscription information, you can look at, okay, what's their age? Where are they at? They're talking about career. They're talking about wanting a job. And you can go back to your notes, or you can just have this information be something that you really help yourself to remember, so that you can look at, okay, this person is 14 years old. What I want to focus on is what are their interests? What are their values? What are their skills? What's their personality? What are their goals? What do they want to accomplish? And I'm going to try to help them with doing that, right? But if the person's 10, right, maybe I'm going to look at what's their social level. What's the lowest type job that they would want to do? And then let's look at a tolerable boundary for a highest point to reach, perhaps. Okay, if you could do anything you wanted to, what would it be? And talk about how you could make that happen, and talk about building up to that point, right? And then you've got this zone of acceptable alternatives. And so you see the prestige level, low to high on this side, and then masculine to feminine. So you got the zone here, and that's a graph that is used to help you guys understand how to accept alternatives. So if they're very masculine and they want high prestige, right, you can look at how that applies for each individual. And then process of compromise, whereas circumscription is the process by which individuals reject alternatives they deem unacceptable. Compromise is the process by which they abandon their most preferred alternatives. This was influenced by perceptions of how attainable a career goal is and actual or perceived barriers. And then she also talked about the 4 principles of compromise, which are written here, about conditional priorities and how they'll settle for something is good enough. They'll avoid making choices if the choices seem good enough. They'll avoid making any choice at all if none of the choices seem good enough. And if necessary, people may make psychological accommodations by changing their view of themselves. Well, I can handle that. Well, that's not so bad. Or I'm this or I'm that. And that'll be a way that they will accommodate a job to fit for them. Self-creation is another term that Gottfredson used to refer to the complex manner in which genetics influence a person to create life consistent with one's genetic makeup. She concluded that socialization theory has effectively been disproved and that there is a need to acknowledge the important role of genetics in influencing life outcomes. So Gottfredson was big on genetics impacting your work. That's something good to remember for future quizzing. And then Gottfredson has shifted focus dramatically from the impact of socialization on occupational choice to the impact of one's genetic makeup on occupational choice and career success. A controversial addition that she had was that recent research is focused on how intelligence levels differ across racial groups. She asserts the idea of equal potential across races and is a collective fraud and egalitarian fiction. Right. And lastly, what you can do is you can apply what this chapter had to say to each of those clients or one of those clients, and you can write about it down below in the chat. But ultimately, what can you take away from this chapter is that it's important to know the readiness that a client has when it comes to doing career counseling. Are they ready to explore new options? Are they ready to do new things? Are they open to looking at their values and morals and interests? Or do they even know what those things are in order to be able to start making some career decisions? Right? That's important information to know. But that's all I have for this chapter 3 lecture. Sorry, I've been a little tongue-tied today. Chapter 3 lecture, and I will see you in the next one. Good night. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, whatever time of day it is when you're watching this.